Ready? This is how it works. You got to put up close right here. Oh, that was juicy. Well,
Off to a good start.
we're killing it. Want to watch a lawyer squirm? Do's and don'ts. Springs publicly ask legal advice questions on experts in their field. Welcome to the next episode, as Dr. Dre would say, of Do's and Don'ts. We are joined today. I am Bobby, again, too many times, pulling the load here, but I am joined today with our good friend, longtime, what would we call you?
I have no idea what you call me. I know what I would call myself.
What?
Longtime colleague.
Colleague, that's
and
the word.
Friends.
And friends. Angela Campbell.
Yep.
Angela has been a lawyer in Des Moines area for how long?
Since 2003.
2003. And partner
Partner?
in the law firm of which one?
Dickey Campbell and Say Hague Law Firm in the East Village.
East Village, okay.
Yep.
They're the East Village people. Okay. And before you were there, you were with the Federal Public Defender's Office.
Correct?
And that's when we first got to know each other, our whole group.
Yep.
And so you are a long time, probably one of the original subscribers to the podcast, true?
True. I am a subscriber. I try to listen to all the episodes.
Original-
Even before you were cool.
Which
And then after you
It's
weren't
been a
cool
while.
anymore. Just kidding. I'm still a subscriber and listener.
original fan person.
I love the podcast.
Well, more importantly, we love you. We appreciate you being here. And I tell everybody, they're like, who is Angela Campbell? I'm like, she would be the person I would hire if I were in trouble or needed anything. Hands down. Yeah. So
You mean when?
when? Hopefully
When?
if.
When?
No, we're going with if. Let's keep it with if.
All right.
So the way this works, do's and don'ts, this year we've mixed it up. And so what we do is we bring in experts from the legal community, and we go to Reddit
Okay.
and we pull questions. We try to find off the wall questions. They're not always off the wall, that relate to your kind of jam, like your areas of expertise.
Okay.
So real quick, before we go with the first one, what is your primary practice areas?
You know, I don't really have one primary area anymore. I'm a litigator, so anything that's going to court, I will take a look at and see if it's something that I feel like I'm competent in and am interested in.
Can we rephrase that word?
Sure.
Can we say trial lawyer instead of litigator?
Sure.
Litigator.
Trialer.
Litigator's kind of like a paper pusher, like a summary judgment
push a
person.
lot
I
of
mean,
paper.
You do.
I do, and I'm also in court all the time.
You kick ass.
So I'm both.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm a trial lawyer.
Thank you. Okay.
So my original practice area was criminal defense, and I still do quite a bit of criminal defense work. I do federal criminal defense and state criminal defense, but I have other areas I'm also interested in, which include civil work in specific areas, including False Claims Act litigation, legal malpractice on the plaintiff's side, and then some other general civil litigation.
So fun fact, our first question, we warm you up. So we do an initial
Okay.
do's and don'ts episode, and then we come back and we kind of turn up the heat. So the first one, I'm going to call it a softball,
Okay.
but it is in your area of expertise as it relates to false claims.
Okay.
And generally speaking, false claims, what are we talking about when we're talking about False Claims Act, that kind of stuff?
So there's both a federal statute and a state statute. They both have the same idea. So if somebody is getting money from a government, so the federal government or the state government, and they're making a claim for that money, but they make a false claim in some way,
Hence the name False
hence
Claims.
the False Claims Act, that's something that the federal government can sue them for or charge them with, generally as a crime or as a civil recovery action. But the False Claims Act allows for what's called a relator or a whistleblower to file the claim in the name of the United States government. And then there's a complicated process by which the United States or state government reviews the claims, and if they decide they want to litigate it themselves, they'll take it over and intervene in the case. But the statute allows for an attorney that's representing the relator to bring the claim if the government declines to intervene and still recover money for the government.
We can do the government's work for them.
We do the government's work for them,
Okay.
and then we get a percentage of their recovery.
All right. With that in mind,
Okay.
the very first one. Are you ready?
Yes.
This is not, unfortunately, like Megan Guns' question with the sex offender with the tricycle on the hood ornament.
Okay.
It's not that much fun.
Not that much fun.
No. But the title of this one is, I am a snitch for the federal government
Okay.
and state of Illinois for Medicaid fraud.
Gotcha.
Or medical fraud. And I'm going to paraphrase it, but I'm going to read most of it. The question is, I already went through the process of convicting the lab company that was committing fraud. Now my lawyer is going after the doctor. Will the doctor find out it was me? Is my name on the legal paperwork? I'm a little afraid of this doctor because he was physical with me one time when I forgot to send his refills to the pharmacy first thing in the morning. I don't work there anymore. I'm just afraid he might try to find me and hurt me or my family. There's more, but that's in essence the gist.
Okay.
Okay. So
You said this was easy. This
No.
is not an easy fact pattern.
it's not. It's
Okay.
simple to read,
Yes.
but what's the complicated legal analysis?
Well, first, he's saying they convicted somebody, which indicates to me that he's testifying in a criminal case
Okay.
as a witness that has a cooperation agreement with the government. But because he references Medicaid fraud, that has the possibility of being a False Claims Act case, in which, in the right circumstance, if he was what we would call the original source of the information that resulted in the conviction or recovery of this money, he would be able to file a False Claims Act case against the doctor and or the lab to recover the amount that they defrauded the government for and get a percentage of that recovery.
Okay, so this person,
Yes.
he, they, she, whatever, identifies himself as a snitch,
Yes.
which in our terminology would usually be related to a criminal cooperating witness.
Yes.
Okay. Can there be both criminal and civil implications for this type of case? In particular, we'll just say medical fraud, Medicaid, Medicare, whatever it may be.
Yes.
How so?
So there's all sorts of, so Medicaid fraud actually is interesting.
Do tell. What's the difference
I
between, can you tell us the difference between Medicaid and Medicare? Because I always use them wrong.
Yes, they're different statutes and different ways of payment. And
Okay.
Medicare fraud is almost always a federal case.
Okay.
Medicaid, however, is money funded to the states from the federal government to use for a variety of different purposes for state Medicaid purposes. And that means you have both state regulation and federal regulation, and it's partially funded by the federal government, but could also be funded by the state government, which means you have a claim both in federal court or in state court under either False Claims Act for Medicaid fraud.
So Medicaid could involve state funds and federal funds.
It could.
And if that's the case, then potentially people that are making false claims for payment, medical bills, that kind of thing, to get paid either from state or federal entities, then can be in trouble on both sides.
In theory, yes.
And theoretically.
Theoretically.
We don't know on this fact.
We don't know on this fact pattern. We also don't even know if he's talking about a criminal case or he says convicted and he says snitch. That indicates to me we're talking about a criminal case, but it also indicates to me there's civil liability here potentially. Now, the difference between criminal liability and civil liability in this situation of Medicaid or Medicare or any sort of healthcare fraud is that in the criminal context, generally you're getting what your fraud was, the government recovers that amount. The False Claims Act.
So by fraud, you mean what you stole from the government gets that back,
Right.
that amount.
Right.
Okay.
Plus you go to jail, plus you have fines, et cetera.
Prison.
prison, probation, fines, whatever is for that particular statute, depending on a whole bunch of different things we don't need to talk about.
Okay.
But the False Claims Act has a treble damages.
A what?
Treble damages
It's like a treble hook, like when we go fishing. Lindholm likes to fish a lot. He uses those treble hooks. Three hooks.
It's like if you and I play poker. I know I'm going to make my money times 3.
That's rude.
But
That's really rude.
if I played against someone else in your firm that is maybe better at poker than you, I would only get
Nobody.
1 damage, and that would be the criminal case. So me against you would be like a
See
civil
how this
case
works? This isn't supposed to be a roast.
where I get 3 times
Okay.
what the damages are.
So if they, on the civil side, so criminal side, all that happens is the government gets their money back. And the person goes to prison, all that other bad
And
stuff.
fines, yeah.
Fines, all that stuff.
Blah, blah, yes.
Civil, snitching for stealing from the government. The person or the government can get 3 times
Correct.
what was stolen from them back.
Not only 3 times, they can get 3 times what was stolen back. Plus, they can get a set amount depending on what year, because the damages change per year, or the statute gets amended a lot. But you get a per false claim. There's a civil penalty provision in to the tune of
Per submission.
per submission for several $1,000s per submission, plus attorney's fees for the relator.
And so the relator is in essence the tattletale.
Correct.
Let's rephrase that. Tattletale is not the right word. The whistleblower.
Whistleblower
The person
is the legal term.
the honest individual who's calling the fraud for what it is.
Correct.
So, for example, an office administrator who finally has enough, their conscience can't take it, and they say, you know what, I got to tell on somebody we're robbing the federal government, and I can't take that anymore.
Right.
So procedurally, I'm curious, how does that work? So like if you're that person that has the knowledge that your employer is stealing from the federal government or state government, this person is fearful for their safety, fearful for their protection. How does somebody go about doing that in the most, if we're talking about do's for do's and don'ts, what do you do if you were that person with that knowledge?
I mean, the first thing I would do is consult an attorney, even though you may not have done anything wrong yourself, but you're still going to want to consult an attorney for a number of reasons. First off, you are going to be reporting a crime, but you're also reporting fraud. So how you do that in the best and safest way, I think an experienced attorney would be helpful.
Because you don't want to end up yourself getting indicted as a co-conspirator.
Right.
Okay.
And there's this special provision of the False Claims Act that you can't represent yourself pro se in a False Claims Act. So whereas criminal defendants or even civil litigants in most cases can do parts of it or all of the case themselves pro se, meaning by themselves, False Claims Act doesn't allow that. You have to be represented.
Have to lawyer up.
You have to lawyer up because you can't have you think of it as you're in the position of the United States. So your relator's hiring an attorney and that person's representing the interests of the United States in the name of this other person. That can't be done by a person that's not an attorney because the person has to be licensed to practice law because they're representing the United States.
You can't pro se represent America.
Right. America
Okay.
does not hire pro se people.
Okay. And then, so lawyering up, you get that in place. And then how does a person in that situation most effectively protect themselves?
So to answer the question that he's actually asking,
Yes,
he or
let's do
she's
that.
actually asking in this post, there is almost never a scenario where you can promise pure protection that they're not going to know who it is.
Okay.
Now, in a criminal context, if someone makes allegations and provides information and they're a witness against you in a criminal case, the criminal defendant has a right to know who that person is. And so if a criminal charge gets brought against the person, they're going to find out
Right.
that it's you. And even if the government tries to protect that person and calls them a confidential source, for example, as you and I both know, it doesn't usually take very much for us to figure out who those people are.
Right.
Because only us, especially in Medicaid fraud or Medicare fraud, only a handful of people would even know enough to be able to allege it sufficient to generate any interest from the government. So in the criminal context, you're probably not keeping it secret. In the civil context, now, when you file a False Claims Act, there's this provision where you file everything under seal ex parte to start with.
Ex parte seems fancy. What does that mean?
It means the other side doesn't get to know.
Okay. Top secret.
Top secret only, and there's a seal on the case, so you actually can't talk about it. You can't file it and then go tell your buddy at the bar, I filed a False Claims Act against my employer.
You're sworn to secrecy.
It's all sealed. And
Okay.
if you break the seal, meaning you tell people about what you're doing, you yourself are going to harm the case and your chances of recovery. So you can't break the seal on, I mean, we're drinking beer, similar. You can't break the seal while they're investigating. So the relator will will send what are called initial disclosures, report all the known wrongful conduct to the government under seal, and they'll file a petition under seal with ex parte protections with the federal courts, or in theory, you could have a state-only filing, but that's pretty rare. It's usually in federal court. So you would file that, and then the government has a certain amount of time to investigate your allegations and decide whether or not they're going to intervene. And during that process, your identity is secret.
Top secret.
Top secret. It's under seal.
And you get in trouble for breaking the seal.
You get in trouble for breaking the seal. The government's not going to break the seal. The defendant is, in theory, not going to even know it's a False Claims Act.
Okay.
So what the government can go about investigating in a number of ways, but one way they do is they send requests for documents, or they send interrogatories to the defendant, and immediately the defendant's going to call, they almost always have, big expensive lawyers.
Yep.
They're going to call those big expensive lawyers who are going to read this interrogatory or document request, and that lawyer's going to be like, oh, you might have a False Claims Act case that's filed against you, but they don't get a copy of the petition.
Okay.
They're just going to know generally that it happens. Now, we've done a number of these, and we definitely have times when immediately the defendant knows who it is.
Right.
And they fire the person that they think is the
Which just helps,
telltale.
right? Helps the case. Yeah.
There's a provision for that within the False Claims Act. They anticipate that happening, and so you get extra damages if you get fired,
Okay.
regardless of whether you were correct in your claim that they're committing fraud or not. It's a retaliatory employment question. So even though it's top secret and under seal, they still usually can figure it out. And then if you're right and the case proceeds, eventually that petition is going to be unsealed, and the header has your name on it. So it'll say, like, let's say you were tattling on someone.
Yep.
And
I'd tell on Corey in a heartbeat.
you would tell on Corey, so
100%.
that the caption would read, United States of America, ex-rel,
That'd be sweet.
Robert Rehkemper
Yes.
versus defendant. So in our hypothetical, Corey Gorley, right?
Yeah.
So that is the caption. So immediately upon unsealing, they're going to know who the person is because it's in the top of the document.
So don't expect anonymity long-term in these.
Correct.
However, make these claims, because if you're right and they're cheating, it's in everybody's best interest, your best interest, government's best interest, the world's best interest to bring the cheating to a stop.
Right. And also do protect yourself, because retaliation, both in employment context and danger, real danger context, is real in these kind of things.
So we're gonna say if we're breaking this down to do's and don'ts, because we're out of time, we're gonna say take personal security seriously.
Yes.
It's not just shit you see in the movies.
Yes.
Okay. Do disclose these cheats and frauds.
Yes.
When you know about them,
Yes.
and then give us some don'ts.
Don't tell people you're doing it.
True. Okay.
I would say, don't think you're going to represent yourself and recover money.
Yep.
Don't make up the allegation, because there's a provision in the False Claims Act where if you've made it up, they get to come back on you.
And that sends you to prison.
Sends you to prison, and you have to pay their attorney's fees.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
All right. Well, thanks for the warm up.
Sure.
All right. We'll be back
That's the
with
easy
another one.
one.
That's
Okay.
the easy one. That's the one she can talk apparently all day for.
Yep.
No, I'm joking.
I could.
That's great. Amazing. Good stuff. We'll be right back.